Here's something we often forget. People don't live in reality. They live in stories, narratives, dreams, and Law 32 understands that deeply. Play to people's fantasies.
Exactly. Logic rarely moves people, but fantasy, that's where emotion lives. That's where power hides. If you know how to tap into someone's inner world, you can guide their outer decisions.
That's what Robert Greene is revealing here. The truth isn't always useful. People reject it, they resist it, but offer them something they want to believe, and they'll follow you willingly.
And this goes beyond manipulation. It's about recognizing what people crave: escape, transformation, magic, meaning. If you speak to that, you stop being just another voice. You become a symbol.
We see this with leaders, brands, even movements. The most powerful ones don't sell products or plans, they sell hope. They sell identity. They offer a better version of reality.
Because the raw truth can feel cold, limiting, disappointing. But fantasy, it's expansive. It seduces the imagination. It makes people feel alive.
And when someone makes you feel alive, you want more of them. You trust them. You even defend them. That's influence at its deepest level.
Let's be honest, people aren't looking for the most logical answer. They're looking for the most compelling one, the one that feels true enough and beautiful enough to follow.
And if you can offer that, you don't just lead, you inspire. That's the distinction this law makes. Control through fantasy is more lasting than control through facts.
And that's why artists, visionaries, storytellers, even con artists hold so much sway. They know how to paint possibilities, and when you paint a world someone wants to live in, they'll pay, vote, or follow to get there.
So ask yourself, what are the fantasies of the people around you? What are they escaping from, and what are they trying to escape into?
Because once you see that, you stop selling logic and start offering meaning. Think about every major movement, every charismatic leader. They didn't just speak to what is, they spoke to what could be. They gave people a story where they were the hero, the victim, the savior, or all three.
Exactly. Martin Luther King didn't say, "Here are the data points about injustice." He said, "I have a dream," and that dream resonated deeper than any statistic could.
And that's why this law is so powerful and dangerous. Because once you know how to craft a dream, you can lead people anywhere, for good or for manipulation.
And that's where responsibility enters. Playing the fantasies doesn't mean feeding delusion. It means understanding the emotional architecture of the people you're trying to influence.
Because everyone is running from something, boredom, fear, shame, and running toward something else, success, love, purpose, and most of that isn't rational.
Exactly. Rationality is the surface, but fantasy is the current underneath. If you want real influence, speak to what people feel, not just what they think.
And this applies to everything: marketing, leadership, even dating. If you offer someone an experience that aligns with the story they want to believe about themselves, you become magnetic.
You're no longer just a person or a product. You're a portal, a path to something better, brighter, more meaningful.
But here's the catch. If the fantasy breaks, if the illusion shatters, the fall is brutal. That's why con artists crash so hard. The betrayal of belief cuts deeper than lies.
Because when you play to fantasy, you're playing with identity. You're not just giving information, you're shaping self-image. And when that cracks, trust evaporates.
So the key is to anchor fantasy in emotional truth. You don't have to lie, you just have to frame the truth in a way that feels expansive, full of possibility.
Exactly. Use narrative, use vision, give people something worth following, not just something to understand.
Because in the end, people don't follow clarity, they follow meaning, even if it's wrapped in illusion.
Let's talk culture. Most of what we consider normal is built on shared fantasies. The idea of success, the dream of love, even what it means to be free. These are all stories we agree to believe in.
And when you understand that, you realize how deep this law goes. Playing to people's fantasies isn't just about influence, it's about shaping culture. Narratives create norms.
That's why brands work so hard on storytelling. Nike doesn't just sell shoes, It sells the fantasy of personal greatness. Apple doesn't just sell phones, it sells the idea of being different, creative, elite.
Exactly. You're not buying function, you're buying feeling, a story, a version of yourself you want to become. And if the story resonates, the logic doesn't matter anymore.
And that's true in politics too. Candidates don't just run on policies, they run on emotion. Make America great again. Yes, we can. Simple phrases, huge fantasies.
Because people vote with their hearts, not spreadsheets. They want to believe in something bigger than themselves, something that makes them feel seen, empowered, important.
And that opens the door for both transformation and abuse. Because when fantasy is used with integrity, it inspires. But when it's used for control, it can enslave.
That's why Greene's law is neutral. It's a weapon, and like any weapon, it depends on the hands that wield it.
So if you're a leader, a creator, an influencer, ask yourself, what kind of world are you inviting people into? What fantasy are you reinforcing?
Because when people step into your story, they lower their guard, they suspend doubt, they let the fantasy guide them. That's a sacred responsibility.
And it's tempting to use that access selfishly, to exaggerate, inflate, promise too much. But if you break the fantasy, if you cross the line, the trust won't come back.
So here's the line. Never promise what you can't emotionally deliver. The fantasy doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to feel safe.
Safe enough for people to believe, because once they believe, they'll move with you, follow you, defend you, not because they have to, but because they want to.
So let's get practical. How do you actually play to someone's fantasy without being fake?
Great question. The key is emotional resonance. You don't invent something out of thin air. You listen. What does the person really want? Not what they say, what they feel.
Because feelings don't lie. People might say they want logic or truth, but deep down, they crave transformation, hope, relief, recognition.
Exactly. So the move is to take something real, a need, a fear, a dream, and build a story around it. One that feels possible, one that makes people feel seen.
And it's not about over-promising. It's about offering a vision, a direction that feels better than the current state. That's what fantasy is, an invitation into a better emotional landscape.
And the people who master this aren't loud. They're clear. Their words carry imagery, rhythm, energy. They don't inform, they evoke.
Think of a great speaker or storyteller. They don't just speak, they transport. And people follow not just because of what's being said, but because of what they're feeling while they listen.
And in that emotional space, change becomes possible. Decisions become easier, resistance drops. That's influence without pressure.
But here's the line. Never let fantasy replace responsibility. Inspire, yes, but ground your message in values, in real outcomes, not just illusions.
Because when people feel misled, they don't just leave, they turn. Disappointment turns into resentment, and the fall from fantasy is hard.
That's why playing to fantasies ethically requires clarity of intention. Ask yourself, am I leading people towards something better or just toward me?
Because one path builds trust, the other builds dependency, and power that feeds on dependency always backfires.
So speak to people's dreams, but respect their minds. Inspire emotion, but deliver substance.
That's the balance. When fantasy meets integrity, you don't just capture attention, you create transformation.
Let's talk application. How does someone use this law day to day without turning into a manipulator?
It starts with awareness. Every conversation is a story exchange. If you enter with facts and logic, you stay on the surface. But if you enter with vision, with emotion, you tap into something deeper.
That's why great leaders don't just say what's happening. They describe what could happen. They give people a role in something bigger than themselves.
Same with content creators. The ones who grow fast, they don't just inform, they elevate. They speak to desire, identity, transformation. Their audience doesn't just listen, they imagine.
Exactly.
A fitness coach, for example, isn't selling workouts, they're selling the fantasy of strength, confidence, freedom. And if they do it right, that fantasy pulls people into action.
Because fantasy is fuel. It moves people. But here's the twist. It has to feel personal. One-size-fits-all dreams don't connect. You have to speak to their version of better.
And that means observing, listening, picking up on the metaphors people use, the stories they tell themselves. That's where their emotional world lives.
Then, once you understand their landscape, you don't push, you mirror. You reflect back the best version of them that they already want to believe in.
And that's magnetic, because no one forgets the person who made them feel seen or the person who gave them hope.
That's what fantasy does. It elevates you above the noise, because while others are arguing about facts, you're painting possibility.
And people don't chase proof. They chase potential. Especially in uncertain times, the one who can describe a compelling future gains trust faster than the one who just explains the present.
So if you want to stand out in business, art, leadership, don't just deliver information, deliver imagination. Give people something to believe in, something to move toward.
And when you do that consistently, something powerful happens. You stop needing attention because people seek you out.
So let's bring it all together. People want more than reality. They want meaning. They want to feel part of a story that makes sense of their struggles, their dreams, their desires.
And if you can offer that story, not a lie, not an illusion, but a meaningful frame, they'll follow you, not out of fear or obligation, but from emotional resonance.
That's what makes this law so different. It doesn't force, it invites. It speaks to something deeper than logic, the human longing for transformation.
And this is why facts alone aren't enough. You can be right and still lose the room, because people don't always choose what's true. They choose what feels true to them.
That's why the best communicators, leaders, and creators don't just know what to say, they know how to make people feel seen in their story.
And when that happens, the bond is unshakable, because now you're not just a voice in the crowd, you're part of their internal narrative. You're helping them become who they want to be.
But here's the warning. If you break that emotional connection, if the fantasy turns sour, the trust won't just fade, it'll flip. Because betrayal of belief is deeper than betrayal of facts.
So use this law with clarity, with respect. Play to fantasy, yes, but anchor it in honesty. Give people the dream, but never forget the responsibility that comes with being a dream giver.
In a world flooded with noise, fantasy isn't distraction, it's direction. The question is, are you offering empty dreams or meaningful ones?
And remember, fantasy isn't weakness, it's a doorway. And if you learn how to open that door the right way, you don't just influence, you elevate.
Next week, we explore one of the most psychologically intense laws of all, Law 33, Discover Each Man's Thumbscrew. We'll uncover how to find someone's deepest drive and what happens when you press on it.
Until then, stay aware of the stories around you. Ask yourself, what do people want to believe? And what story are you telling?
Because when you master the art of fantasy, you don't chase power, you attract it.